Now, I never ask anything of you guys, but here I ask each and every one of you to watch this video to the end, because this is some of the most important information I will ever give you, and it should be super fascinating for you.
For the record, I'm done trying to make y'all comfortable. For the record, you ain't trying to grow, then it's done for you.
So as many of you know, my health was absolutely in the gutter for around 5 to 6 years. This here was my reality. So in today's video, I wanted to go through my story from start to finish, as I haven't done this before, to give hope for some of you dealing with health issues, and for the rest of you, some information that will be potentially life-saving. So in 2013, I started to experience some pain and discomfort in the manly area, went to the doctor, and after a brief examination, I was told that I had epididymitis, which is a bacterial infection. No further tests were carried out, and I was told that I needed antibiotics to stop the spread of the bacterial infection, and that it could turn quite nasty if I didn't stop the bacteria in its tracks right there and then. I had never taken antibiotics in my adult life, and had only taken antibiotics once or so in my childhood. So against my better judgment, I took the prescription and headed to the chemist. That single decision destroyed my health and ruined my life for around 5 to 6 years. So the first antibiotic that I took, I saw no improvement, and after 3 weeks I returned back to my doctor and was prescribed a much stronger antibiotic called doxycycline, and remained on that for an additional 5 weeks. So the total amount of time on both antibiotics was around 8 weeks. Halfway through the course of the second antibiotics, I started to experience some different symptoms, from dizziness and digestive issues. These were reported to my doctor, who put them down to common side effects. Just when I was coming to the end of the course of both antibiotics, I underwent a scan, as the pain that I was experiencing had not subsided. At the scan, I was told that I had a large varicocele on my testicle, basically a large vein, and this was what was causing the pain, and that I should have not have been put on the antibiotic from the start. From here onwards, my health spiraled out of control. I stopped all antibiotics on the 9th of May 2013, and over the next 2 weeks I developed about 20 different symptoms, from severe dizziness, heartbeat issues, and also severe nausea. I couldn't get out of bed and thought I had a severe case of flu or even a viral infection. After 2 weeks, the symptoms continued to get worse and worse, and I was losing a lot of weight and was struggling to eat. I went back to the doctors for some blood tests, and I was told that the only thing that they could find was elevated liver enzymes. On the 25th of May 2013, I'd been feeling shocking all day and decided to go to bed early to get some rest. The only way that I can explain it was like the worst ever hangover you have ever experienced, times by 100, and I promise I'm not exaggerating. So about an hour into my sleep, I woke up with my heart racing around 140 beats per minute, and it was increasing all of the time. I called an ambulance and was taken to a local hospital and had some tests run. Now at this point I was a mess, and my mind was starting to play tricks on me. So many of you know that I've lost both parents who were both young to chronic diseases, and a sister in her 30s to leukemia. So when my mystery illness popped up and I was feeling so shocking, I was convinced that something nasty was coming my way. I literally can't tell you how rough I felt that night in hospital. So I was stunned when the doctor come round that evening with my test results and said that I was perfectly healthy apart from my elevated liver enzymes. I went home and continued to get worse and worse. I was having reactions to all foods that I was eating. I was having severe irregular heartbeats. I was dizzy, and I was a total mess, and I couldn't even get out of bed. And to make matters worse, my anxiety was through the roof, as I didn't have a clue what was happening to me. All I knew is that I was perfectly fine until I took the antibiotics, and then bam, I wasn't. So I started to do a lot of research on the medications that I had taken, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I literally found thousands and thousands of people online who had experienced the same identical reactions as me. Many had recovered fairly quickly, while many others were trapped with debilitating symptoms for years on end. I went back to my doctor and explained what I had found, and I was simply ridiculed for what I was saying. Sorry sir, these medications can't do what you are saying. We can't find anything that's wrong with you. It's basically all in your head. I continued to do a lot of research on the medications that I had taken, and found a number of different case studies on people who had taken the antibiotics and committed suicide. I never really experienced depression on them, but many people that I spoke to who had the same reactions as me said they had also experienced severe depression and also suicidal thoughts. One thing that I noticed in these case studies that linked all of these people that committed suicide is that in their post-mortems it was found that they had problems with their P450 enzymes. So basically their body couldn't metabolize the drug properly, and it would build up in their body and become very toxic. So all of this research was in amongst me feeling shocking 24 hours a day. I literally couldn't work and I was confined to bed for most of the day sleeping. It was literally a year before I could even think about returning to work. After I'd found out the information on the enzyme problems in those who had committed suicide, I decided to book myself in to see one of the world's leading pharmacogenetics experts in the UK. A pharmacogenetics expert is basically someone who looks at severe adverse reactions of medications caused by a person's genetic predisposition to those drugs. So I had the tests and they showed that I did indeed have a cytochrome P450 enzyme deficiency. And this essentially meant that when I was taking the antibiotics and after some ibuprofen when I thought I had the flu, the medications were building up in my body and causing havoc. Now, one shocking fact that I learned from this professor was that anywhere from 1 to 15% of populations have genetic mutations, depending on their ethnicity, etc., in their P450 enzymes, which make them a higher risk for severe adverse reactions to medications. Now, I want to quickly play a clip from Professor Munir Pirmohamed, who tested me in the UK. The professor is by far one of the smartest people that I have ever spoken with. He holds many chairs in the UK and around the world, and among one he holds is the only NHS chair of pharmacogenetics in the UK. So what he doesn't know about cytochrome P450s, drug reactions and genetics is not really worth knowing. He really is a true expert in his field, so please listen carefully to what he says here.
So here's the burden of adverse drug reactions. It's a busy slide, but I'll take you through this very quickly. So the first two balloons there are studies that we conducted within the northwest of England. And basically, these are the largest studies of their kind in the world. And what we showed was that 6.5% of all patients admitted to our hospitals were admitted because of adverse drug reactions. When a patient is admitted to hospital with an illness, disease process, their physiology is changing all the time, the pathology is changing all the time, and the doctors are changing medications to be able to control the disease process. And in that situation, 15% of patients will develop an adverse drug reaction. So overall, the burden is high, and we're not bad prescribers in the Northwest England. This is seen in every part of the world, and these data have been replicated in many different countries from the Far East right through to the United States. The next two balloons are studies in the United States. Emergency room attendances, 2.5% are due to adverse drug reactions, while in ambulatory care, 25%, 1 in 4 patients will get some form of adverse drug reaction. Most of it is mild, but some of it is severe enough to cause admission to hospital. So overall, the burden, if we equate that to the overall bed base, for example, the United Kingdom in the National Health Service, at this very moment in time, there are 8,000 beds occupied by patients with adverse drug reactions. 70% of those are potentially avoidable through better prescribing. And you will all know of the famous paper that appeared in JAMA by Jason Lazarou, which said that in the US, adverse drug reactions are between the 4th to 6th commonest cause of death. This was based on 1994 figures. I don't know whether it's still true, but it probably many things haven't changed.
Now, the reason why many of these people are dying in America and around the world is due in part to mutations in their cytochrome P450 enzymes. And today there are a number of first cases of people in the US who have been severely disabled by drugs who have sued the pharmaceuticals for failing to disclose these known risks. Many of these deaths and harm could be avoided if people took the genetics tests that are available, which would tell them which medications they should potentially avoid. So now at least I knew what caused my health issues, but I didn't know why they were still continuing. So I literally turned to nutrition and I read everything on the damage that antibiotics do to the body and tried working back from this. While I experienced a relief in some symptoms by avoiding certain foods such as wheat and gluten, I still felt shocking over the next few years. My irregular heartbeat issue was getting worse and worse, and I was struggling with getting out of bed and going to work on a daily basis. So basically, through a lot of research and a lot of trial and error on the foods that I was eating, I learned that the antibiotics had basically caused my body not to be able to tolerate things like salicylates, histamines and oxalates, among many other different health problems that I was experiencing. This was a bit of a perfect storm because all of those histamines, oxalates and salicylates are found in fruits and vegetables, so the foods that will help many people to get better will actually send my body in the opposite direction. I worked very hard to get my health back on track. I was on a very restrictive diet to control my symptoms, and I worked to heal my gut and repopulate my gut with healthy bacteria. And this was a very real challenge, as I literally reacted to everything that I ate. As of today, you can see I'm in a much better place than I was a few years ago, and there have been many ups and downs along the way. Now, the reason that I tell you this story is for two simple reasons. One, I really want people to know how for some people, medications can be life-destroying. But I want to caveat this and say that in a very high proportion of people, these medications are life-saving. And I specifically want people to be aware of the genetic issues with cytochrome P450 enzymes and the landmines that you can step on if you aren't aware. And two, I want you to know that for many of you, no matter how bad your health is, there is always hope. And if you want it bad enough and you educate yourself and you do all of the right things, then anything is possible. The last 7 years have changed my life and sent me on a journey of self-discovery. I've finished a master's in nutrition, I've changed careers, I've built a YouTube community that I am incredibly blown away by, and very soon I'm about to embark on that elusive PhD. I also want to say on record that my mother at her time of death at 54 was on over 20 different medications a day prescribed by her doctor, and my sister, when she was put on chemotherapy, went downhill very quickly. My opinion, and it's only my opinion because I have nothing to substantiate this, is that I believe that my genetic mutation was present in both my mum and my sister, and ultimately this, in conjunction to the medications that they were taking, cut short their lives. So that's the end of today's video, a bit of a change from the norm. I hope you all enjoyed and found it useful, and as always, remember to look after your body because it's the only place you have to live. And I'll see you next time.